everybody, it is Katie here from the Queen of Teen Fiction, and this is my first wrap up in 2 months. So I didn't bother doing a wrap up in February because I hardly read anything. I somehow managed to crawl through 2 books, but even that was a miracle because I was just in such a huge reading slump, and it's kind of been the same throughout March as well. So I thought I'd just merge the 2 months together and tell you the pitiful amount of books that I've been reading over the past 2 months. This is not like me. I don't get into reading slumps this bad. I've just had zero motivation to read, which is weird because my life just revolves around stories. However, I have been reading a lot more over the past week because I've decided to stop focusing on books that I felt like I needed to be reviewing and instead just concentrate on reading books that I really want to read and I'm excited about. So that is really helping me out lately, and I'm getting back on track with my reading. So hopefully the end of the horrible reading slump is in sight. Hopefully. But anyway, let me talk about the books that I did manage to read. The first book that I read in February is Ink by Alice Broadway. So this book stood out to me immediately because of the blurb. Ink is set in a world where everything about your life is tattooed onto your skin for everyone to see. So every decision you make, every achievement, everything that goes wrong, it is all permanently marked on your skin. So it definitely stood out to me straight away because of that. I can safely say that I have never read a book quite like this one before. So the main character in the story is called Leora. She is about to finish school. Her chosen career that she wants to pursue is an inker. That is somebody who marks people's skin for them. But just before she finishes school, her father passes away after a long illness. And now in this world, when you die, your skin is preserved in a book so that it can tell your life story. It sounds really creepy, I know, but for some reason it works. I'll admit there were a lot of things in this book which were quite creepy because of the way they treat skin. It was a little bit squeamish at times, but all thrown together it just adds to the atmosphere of the story. So before you can receive the book of someone, they have to be judged by a set of officials. They read through their book, make sure it's all legit, make sure that they are a good person, and that way their soul can be freed and their book can return home with their family. Leora has only ever known her father as a great man. He's decent, he's hardworking, he's always took care of her and her mother, so she expects everything to go just fine and that his book will be perfect. Of course, everything isn't that simple. Leora's dad actually has a lot of secrets that she never knew anything about. Over the course of the story, Leora learns more about her father and the life that he used to have. He basically becomes a completely different person to the one that she knew, to the one that raised her. And of course it makes her question what is going on in this world around her and whether it's morally right. So it was an utterly fascinating story. Leora was also a really great character. I love how throughout the story she was exceptionally loyal to her way of living, to the culture that she's been brought up in. She doesn't see anything wrong with people's life being put on their skin. That's all she's ever known and she's grown up with that. So she finds it very difficult to question it. And I find that in a lot of fantasy books, when the protagonist has that moment where they find out there is corruption, where they find out that a loved one might have been involved with some sort of rebellion, they switch sides very quickly and become this good person that fights for a better world. And with Leora, it genuinely takes her the whole course of the story to question what is going on. And that's how it would be realistically. If you've been brought up your whole life living a certain way and someone tells you that it's wrong, you're not going to believe them automatically because that's what you know. So I just love the way Leora was written like that, and you could genuinely see how torn she was becoming because of that. Another thing I really loved about this book is the lack of romance. There is a love interest, and this is the first book in, I think, a trilogy, so I'm assuming there will be some romantic progression there. but it's not a very big part in this story, which is great because I am always talking about how much the romance in fantasy books can often just dampen the whole story. It didn't overpower any of the important stuff in this book, so I was really pleased with that. So I really enjoyed this one, and I am excited to see where the story goes. The next book that I read in February is Dramarama by E. Lockhart. I read this with my monthly book club, and it sounded like the type of book that I thought I would enjoy. It's set in a drama summer camp. The main character is obsessed with musical theatre. It just sounded like a book that I'd enjoy because I often love books that are set in summer camps, especially when they revolve around music and drama and dance. I live vicariously through them because I always wanted to be able to go to a summer camp. I wanted to star in my own version of Camp Rock, but it never happened because I am completely talentless. So I love reading about teenagers who get to go off and have fun at these drama summer camps. So I was really excited to read it, but turned out that it wasn't my thing at all, really. The main character in this book is called Sarah. She sees herself as quite invisible in high school. So when she goes to an audition for this summer camp, she completely reinvents herself as Sadie. She cuts her hair. She gets on a whole new attitude. She meets a boy that she's seen several times but never really spoke to before. His name is Demi. He's a very flamboyant and exciting guy, and she gets along with him straight away. They become best friends. Both of them get into the summer camp, and the story follows their summer at this place. Of course, it doesn't go to plan. It's a lot more difficult than Sadie thought that it would be, and also her friendship with Demi gets tested a lot over the course of the story. For me, one of the best things about this book was Demi and Sadie's friendship with him. I really loved how they acted with each other at the start of the book. The scenes between them were always fun, and they just had such a cute friendship. And then as the story goes on, it turns sour, and I just didn't like the way it was written. Also, Sadie herself just wasn't a likeable character to me. She started irritating me about a quarter of the way through the book and just didn't redeem herself in any way. She kept getting progressively more annoying as the story went on, and I wanted to root for her. I wanted her to have this amazing character arc where she realised what she was doing and turned it all around at the end. Didn't really happen like that. Don't even get me started on the ending, because the ending was just no. The ending made the story feel pointless to me. I would say if you are a massive theatre geek, then you might enjoy this, but I like theatre and I like the sort of vibe of this book, but I didn't enjoy the story, so who knows? It just didn't work for me. So one of the books that I read in March was Damaged by Eve Ainsworth. This book is about self-harm, so straight away I knew that it was probably going to be a bit of a difficult read. I have seen firsthand what self-harm can do to a person, so I was definitely interested in reading this book to see how it portrayed that. I completely adored this book. I didn't enjoy it because it was necessarily an enjoyable read, because it's not. It is tough. It's a difficult subject, but it's also a very important one, and it tells the story really well, which is why I enjoyed it so much. This story follows a girl named Gabby who is grieving after the death of her grandfather. She got along brilliantly with her grandfather. She always felt like she could talk to him and tell him stuff, but he didn't really get on well with his daughter, who is Gabby's mum. So it was a difficult relationship, but now he's gone and she feels like she's the only one who's missing him. She has a lot of built up emotions about the situation, and she doesn't feel like she can talk to anyone about it. One day whilst at the skate park, she falls and hurts herself, and it's then that she realises that pain can take away her internal pain, even if it's just for a little while, and that leads her on the road to self-harm. I loved this book not only for the way it portrayed self-harm, but also for the way it dealt with alcohol addiction. It becomes clear pretty early on in the story that Gabby's grandfather was struggling with alcoholism, and you see him get progressively worse throughout the book as Gabby has flashbacks and relives her memories with him. Addiction to alcohol is one of those things that comes with a lot of stigma humour and a lot of stereotypes. And if you've never been close to a person who has gone through a genuine addiction to alcohol, it can be quite difficult to understand exactly what that's like. Because when you're on the outside of it looking in, it's very easy to say, I wouldn't do things that way, I'd do this, I'd get him help, and so on and so forth, when in reality it's really not that simple. So the way Eve Ainsworth wrote about Gabby's granddad's addiction was just very realistic, and it gave a great insight into what it's really like having to go through that. I could say the same thing about Gabby's self-harm as well. That also gave a great portrayal as to how someone could fall into that even when they think that they'd never self-harm, it had never happened to them. No one knows what's right around the corner. So overall, it's just a really important book, and I hope it's one that gets put in schools across the country a lot, because I definitely think teenagers need to be reading stuff like this. Not only so that people who are going through it don't have to feel so alone, but also for those who don't really know anything about self-harm. I feel like this book does a great job of explaining what that's like, because as this book shows, it's very easy for someone to dismiss self-harm as a way of seeking attention and stuff like that. So I think this is a read that would help people understand that situation a lot better. So I am just very grateful that this book is out there, and it's one that I would highly recommend. So the last book that I've read in March is Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I have been meaning to read this book for so long now. So since I was going through such a bad reading slump, I decided to finally pick this up, and oh boy, do I wish I'd picked it up sooner. Everyone praises this book, and now I see why. This book follows 12-year-old Connor, whose mum is suffering from cancer. He believes that she will get better and that she's on the road to recovery, and he's just trying to get through each day normally, but he doesn't like to face the problems that are really happening. He tries to pretend that everything's fine and doesn't really want to face up to anything. He also puts up with getting bullied at school. He doesn't really attempt to defend himself, he just lets it happen, as though he deserves that kind of punishment, which was a really heartbreaking aspect about his character. One night he has a nightmare about the yew tree in his garden turning into a monster and coming alive. When he wakes up, of course, he just thinks that it was a nightmare, but there are actually twigs in his bedroom that couldn't have got there, so he starts to doubt whether it actually was a nightmare or not. Then over the course of the story, this monster keeps showing up, and it communicates with him. It tells him 3 stories that all have very different outcomes from what you'd expect. This story is basically about Connor coming to terms with what is going on with regards to his mum. It's just such a fantastic story. I loved the writing style. Even though it has got sad subjects in it, Connor is an incredibly witty character. He sasses that monster quite a lot, and I love him for it. The monster itself is a really great character, and I loved the stories that it told. It utterly broke my heart towards the end. I ended up in tears over this book. I'm so glad that I finally picked it up, and if you haven't read it yet, then you seriously need to, because it's so good. So that is it. I've only been through 4 books throughout February and March. The good news is that I have started quite a few books over this past week, so already I know there's going to be more books for me to talk about in April. Please do let me know what you've been reading lately down in the comments. Also, if you've been in a reading slump, what book has got you out of it? Please give me recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.